Though you could hardly be expected to guess why, that is a very surprising picture. In there, the night shift is at work in a place where work has been going on night and day for more than 8 months now, with 3 shifts covering the 24 hours. Now, there are some industries where that would be nothing unusual. But in the British Isles today, in this kind of firm, that's almost startlingly unusual, because that's a shipbuilding yard. Behind me is the prefabricating shed of the Verham shipbuilding yard at Cove, near Cork, in Southern Ireland. The labour force at this yard has risen steadily since January 1959, and it's still taking on men. And this at a time when British shipbuilding yards, with a very few exceptions, are facing their worst times since the black years of depression in the 1930s. The bulging order books of the booming post-war years have dwindled and dwindled until in some cases there are no orders in the books at all. The great yards of Harland and Wolff at Belfast in Northern Ireland have just paid off 7,000 shipyard workers because there's nothing for them to do. On the Clyde, one yard has been reduced to building caravan bodies. Think of it, caravan bodies. Another great yard has built a £1 million freighter on spec. When I was up there recently, they still hadn't found a buyer for it. And yet, this yard goes steadily on from strength to strength. Why? What's different about this yard?
A lot of things are different. These Irish workers have continental bosses, a Dutch manager and Dutch foreman, and the whole yard is run on continental lines. 3 years ago, when the Verham Company of Holland bought over the old ship repairing yard here, they started shipbuilding from scratch. So all the plant is new and the most advanced of its kind, and prefabrication is the keynote. New plant, new methods, Dutch management, these are some of the things that are different in this yard. But the biggest difference of all is that these Irish workers agreed to abandon traditional British practices, some of them simply out of date, which waste time and send up costs. When the Dutch company took over, there were separate and involved agreements with 12 different unions here. Today, 95% of these men belong to just 3 Irish unions, one for unskilled and semi-skilled men, one for skilled craftsmen apart from woodworkers, and one for woodworkers. All 3 unions agreed to replace the old 5-year apprenticeship with a new 3-year training scheme, under which men over 20 train first in a Dutch yard. And with full union approval, these workers have agreed that a man may do any job which is marginal to his main job. Management get flexibility of labour, men get unbroken employment, and at price and delivery dates, this yard can compete with any.
So as I understand it, you 2 shop stewards speak for about 90% of the men employed in the yard here. What would you say are the chief differences between the system here and the system in Britain?
Well, the main difference actually would be, I suppose, the number of men you would have employed in a single operation. There would be by far less here. A plater here would do a certain amount of his own welding, such as tack welding, and he would do a certain amount of burning. Whereas in other shipyards in England, probably you would have a burner standing by and a welder standing by, therefore increasing your costs and increasing the number of men naturally on the job.
This is really a revolutionary change, isn't it? How did you take it in the first place? Were you not a bit worried about it?
Yes, at first we were worried, but then we found that employment was increasing and that really nobody was losing their jobs or otherwise by this.
Now, what about conditions and pay? Are they as good as they are in other yards?
Well, I can't, compare them with England. I don't know the rates over, but as regards to here, they're tops. Take a trainee starting, a young lad, 20 years of age. He starts at 5 shillings an hour.
What will that give him in a normal working week to take home?
11 guineas in a normal work. That's just working 45, but they're all on shift work. So they're averaging £15 a week.
A beginner is?
A beginner. He's
What's
on
a fully
shipboard.
qualified man pulling in?
Well, he's pulling in 5 and 8 an hour, you see.
What's
Well,
that a
take
week
that.
now?
That's 12 odd a week, flat.
What's
Well,
the
a
top,
quarter of
what's
that.
the top earnings here?
They're going up very well. I mean, like, you have, it's all overtime. At the moment here, for the last 12 months, everybody's on
But you're
overtime.
not giving me a figure. You're afraid of the income tax.
My wife, maybe? Oh, around £20 a week, average,
they?
like, yeah.
Yeah.
15 to 20.
As Joint General Manager, Mr. Van Dyke, you're in charge of the actual running of the yard, aren't you?
That's right, yes.
In Britain, I suppose most people blame trade union restrictive practices for the shipyard's troubles, but the managements aren't blameless either, surely, in Britain.
No, I fully agree with you. It's probably the simplest way to blame the unions for all the trouble they have, but I would say that's definitely wrong. I think that the blame is on both sides. The lack of constant employment, that is, I think, the major problem. For when I go back in the short history, we are working here now too, an important thing to offer the man constant employment was his willingness to do certain jobs which may be marginal to his profession. I take, for instance, this. We had riveters working in the past here, and due to the fact that repairs were not constantly available here, they were in maybe a week every month. We then suggested to them that they should come in on a constant base and be prepared when there wasn't any riveting work to do other, what we call air tool jobs, as chipping, scaling, drilling, caulking. They accepted that, and since then those men are constant employed in this yard for the first time in their life, you can say.
Do you think then that the fact that men were casual and liable to be laid off when one job was finished is the biggest cause of Britain's shipyard difficulties?
I wouldn't say the biggest, but anyhow a very important one, because what you need is the feeling with the man that he belongs to the company, that this yard is part of himself too. The problem with casual employment is, first of all, that the man gets the habit, you can't blame them for that, for developing work.
For making work?
Making work. I mean, not
spinning it
working
out.
in the most efficient way. And you can't blame them for that. For working on a repair job on a ship with the knowledge that when the ship is finished, your employment is finished too. Doesn't make you very enthusiastic about the job, and definitely will not give you interest to do the job in the most efficient way.